Hello and welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. It is the epic return. Every couple of weeks he comes over here. Every couple of weeks I go over to his channel. That would be Seahawks Brendon Nelson. Mr. Nelson, welcome back into the Hawks Nest. How are you doing, kind sir?
I'm doing pretty good tonight, man. I'm doing pretty good. Just getting ready for this free agency frenzy, which seems a little less interesting now, but regardless, it's almost here.
Well, and to your point, we've got a lot to cover here on this episode from maybe a little bit of little bit of look to what's happened over the course of this week to the free agency period, which is just about upon us, and how all of our plans, Brendan, you and I had all of these well sculpted free agent plans, like we've been spending time like Michelangelo on a sculpture, right? Just working it day after day after day, doing our videos, talking on our segments, and then there's just a jackhammer taken to it, and now we have to sort of repiece this thing all together. Only a couple days out from what's going to transpire. We also then have the combine in addition to that. So we're going to kind of bounce around to a lot of different subjects today, Brendan. We're going to kind of Jimi Hendrix this, up and down, just free flow it. So I know you can roll with that, but we're going to hit some kind of pointed spots, folks. First thing I want to ask you, Brendan, and of course, we're going to touch on some Russell Wilson and Wagner here. We've got to still talk just on a couple of things with this, though. Again, I'm not going to try to retread over ground that Brendan and I have already covered. Brendan, of course, does have a channel, Seahawks Brendon Nelson. If you're not subscribed to Seahawks Brendon Nelson, please go over there and do so. I go over to his channel every other week. He comes over to mine, does some great content over there. He's been killing it throughout this whole kerfuffle. I don't know what we're going to call this, the dark period. That we're going to have to come up with some nickname, Brendan, that we can reference this period too. But my first
I mean, we're
question.
not really going to know if it's a dark period or not until hindsight, right? Like,
That's true. That's true. We'll hold off
they
on, I
didn't
guess. Yeah, that's true.
they
Hold
didn't
off on the
call it.
nicknames.
Yeah, they didn't call it World War One until there was a World War Two, right? It was just the World War. So you need hindsight to be able to properly name this stuff.
We may call it the Great Rebirth. That may end up being what the true nickname is on it. Do
Hmm.
you? So I guess by that nature, then I would take from you, you're feeling hopeful. You've got a sense actually of rather than feeling like, oh, this was just, you're actually kind of in maybe a general state of, well, we'll see what's happening here.
My mentality is I'm interested, but I'm not excited, is kind of my thing right now. I don't believe in this regime. I don't believe in Carroll anymore. That to me is much stronger than whatever doubts I may have had about Wilson. And I do have a couple, and I'm not sure where this goes. I'm not one of these people who is positive he's going to go to Denver and win some MVPs. I'm not positive he's still going to be an elite quarterback at age 38. But you're not going to get me excited about this. At the end of the day, we just went from having Russell Wilson as our quarterback to Drew Lock as our quarterback. There's nothing to get excited about there. And honestly, because I don't trust this regime, it's going to be kind of hard for them to do anything to get me excited until they actually start stacking up wins.
Yeah.
Even if they take players that I like in the upcoming draft, even if they sign players that I like, I am going to sit there and be like, okay, are you going to play them out of position like you always do? Are you going to ask them to do things that they can't do like you always do? So the right word for me right now is interested. I'm not excited. There's a very key difference there.
Yes, and it's not it's not a thin gray line, by the way. It's a black and white difference in the way that you term that. I probably share the same on this, where I kind of stand on as this ends off. I do wonder a couple days now forward of this. You're hearing some of these narratives out there and things being talked about, like for instance, especially nationally, we're hearing this: the Seattle Seahawks should have gotten more. They should have gotten more. They didn't get darn near enough. When you hear that, do you agree with that standpoint of things, or do you think that they did well enough in this situation?
I don't really mind what they got for Wilson overall. I think at this point it was unreasonable to expect that much more. And I know that there were some people who were thinking like, oh, 4 first round picks, 5 first round picks, but that's illegal. You can't do that.
Yeah,
That's literally illegal. You cannot trade that many first rounders in one trade.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, even though the numbers are good, I mean, I watched every game last year. Wilson did not play that well. And I'm sure other teams are seeing that stuff too. It's not like these other GMs just watch highlight reels and go, yeah, that guy's really good because I saw a 3-minute highlight reel of him throwing nothing but touchdowns.
mm,
So I guess at the end of the day, you take a look at Wilson. He's 33, going to be 34 in the middle of next season, and he hadn't played that well for the last year and a half. I guess that is about the best you're going to do. Like I said the other day, to me, it feels like we got 3 first rounders. It does, because that second rounder, or the first second rounder to me is very, very close.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you're looking at it like that, 3 first rounders, 1 second rounder, and some players. Obviously, the players are a mixed bag, but maybe that was about the best you could do. I don't terribly mind it. Of course, I would have wanted to get more. Of course, I would have liked to have gotten somebody like a Patrick Surtain. Maybe he gets thrown in there instead of Noah Fant, or Bradley Chubb, I guess. But I don't think it's terrible.
And don't you think a little bit of this becomes impacted by the fact that Russell Wilson has the no trade clause aspect of it, that in itself inherently is always going to mean that the team having to move that player who has that card in his back pocket, he's always going to be able to hold his team a little bit over the barrel as to whether he goes. And then the fallout from that is that you get a little bit less than you would ideally like to get.
Yeah, that has to be part of it. I mean, if you completely gut Denver's roster, Russell's going to be like, wait a minute, do I really want to do this anymore? At a certain point, he's going to be like, no, I want to go to a team that actually has some potential here.
Yeah, exactly. And that starts to narrow down the amount of teams at that point, which again, that starts to narrow down the amount of compensation. And I just think that's where we land here, where it's maybe not as much as some people think. But again, I think you agree at the beginning. The question here is, could the Seahawks have really gotten more? Did they really leave stuff on the table? I don't think they did, Brendon. And I think you agree on that too. You'd like to have gotten more, but you don't think they should have, or it was an absolute.
Yeah, and if it was going to be more, it was probably going to be relatively insignificant, like the 4th rounder for 5th rounder swap. Maybe you wipe that out. But are we really going to grandstand over that at this point?
No.
At the end of the day, the question is, should you have traded him at all? To me, that's far more interesting than quibbling over the compensation. And that's the debate, which, I can speculate, but at this point, all we can really say is that time will tell.
Yeah. And we understand, doing this for as much as we do this, we understand both sides of the fence on that particular debate, on both sides who have their point. I think each side had a little bit of a point, especially in the consideration as we were looking forward to the contract that was going to have to be, that was your decision point moving into next offseason, even though you had 2 years of control with Russell. You're going to have to make a decision by next offseason as to whether or not you made him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL or not at 35 years old, where he is at in his career. And that's a tough decision.
Maybe this team looked at it as a lose-lose. If you keep Wilson and he doesn't have a great year, then you're going to not get very much for him in a trade. If you keep him and then he has a stellar year, then you kind of got a gun to your head to give him $55 million a year plus, and you really, really don't want to do that. So maybe they just felt like it's bad no matter what if we keep him, so let's just get rid of him now. The only way keeping him works is if we win the Super Bowl this year. And that's a bad bet to make at the end of the day. You can build the best team you can think of. You can spend all your money, but saying we're going to win the Super Bowl this one year, bad bet.
And it probably leads you to bad decision-making when you're always operating from that standpoint, not from we're going for it, but we've got to go for it because this bad thing is looming if this doesn't go right. It's probably not a great way to operate as an organization, just from a general spirit of things. The thing I'd like to add with this, though, Brendon, and another question along these lines, is that I have a general feeling about this that I wonder if you do the same, because we have reports coming out that there were potentially better options from New York Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles, who, you were right, you can't give the 4 or 5 first-round picks. You can't go 4 years out, 5 years out a first-round pick. But if you have teams that have multiple first-round picks, you could theoretically have 4 first-round picks from the Giants because it's only going out 3 years. You can have as many first-round picks in those first 3 years as you want, but Russell reportedly nixed those trades. Said, no, I'm not doing that. And while that's interesting, that's my question is, does Seattle not, they were willing to bet, they're willing to ride this front office on sort of betting against Wilson, aren't they, just a little bit here with that willingness there, if you think about it?
Yeah, I think clearly they have decided they would rather have Carroll and Schneider than Wilson, and I don't agree with that at all, but They did make that bet quite clearly, especially if the Deshaun Watson rumors have any merit to them, because you trade for Watson, you're going to be paying him elite QB money too. So if you do get Watson, you're saying, oh no, we're willing to pay a QB a ton of money, just not that QB. And we kind of had this conversation a little bit in our last stream, but if you now go get Watson, you're basically saying, yeah, we didn't think Wilson was good enough, which that would be a pretty bold bet, but I can see where it comes from. It's not like they invented it out of nothing. The way Wilson played the last year and a half gave them cause. I mean, we sat here for how many streams last year talking about some of these games where it's just like, man, is he ever going to get it? Is he ever going to be able to do the things that you need to do when you're 35 plus? Like, it was hard to know.
Right. But I mean, the thing we also never see in the NFL is if these type of moves that are never made, once in a general age, you see these type of moves made, they're never usually made within the conference or a team being open to trading. We know the division is totally out. You'd never trade a guy like this within a division. It's usually secondary beyond that. You wouldn't trade him within the conference. But here we have our front office with that willingness. They're not only saying, okay, we don't think you're our guy going forward. They're saying we don't mind you being in our own conference, playing against us, having that epic potential moment that comes out that makes you look at your worst for making the trade. You're in the conference championship up against the Washington Guardians, and Russell comes back and leads them against you and beats you and knocks you out from going to the Super Bowl or something like that. That's why teams don't normally do that, but we didn't. They were willing to cross that bridge. It to me, it speaks more of like, we think his skills are somewhat eroding to we would almost kind of bet on the fact that he's not, that he can't get it done.
Well, it also kind of depends on what the mentality is for this team going into 2022. If you're thinking, we're going to take our time with this rebuild, we're going to plan for like 2024. 2024 might be the year where we're going for it again. If you're thinking about these next 2 years are going to be a process, then I'm not so worried about what Wilson's doing. If he takes another team in the NFC to greatness, then it wouldn't necessarily get in your way because you're in the process of this rebuild. I think that part of it is a little overrated. Obviously, you don't want to trade him in the division, but trading him in the conference, I'm not somebody who freaks out about stuff like that personally.
Yes, I'm not either personally. I just, the teams tend to be that way. So it's not something that wouldn't have scared me with it, but to see the team willing to go there, you go, because teams are so often so stagnant on this. We will not trade them within our conference. It must be on the other side, that they have that mentality with it. But interesting nonetheless. Now, one quick thing on Bobby Wagner, because I think we've talked already a lot about that. One thing I'd, again, just like to take into these narratives a little bit, Brendon, and go at them a little bit. There will be the thought process, I'm sure, from some of our subscribers out there and people in general in the public who think that Bobby Wagner should have been traded. Shouldn't have released him. They should have found a trade partner, somebody who should have taken him on. Can we both agree with his base salary that there was not going to be a trade suitor that you were going to find for Bobby Wagner?
No, I think you would have had to Brock Osweiler that contract and give something up to get rid of that contract almost. Nobody wants to pay a middle linebacker who is getting older and is basically, and I'm sorry to have to say it, but he is basically useless on third down, on a majority of third downs. And that's one point I made in a video I made earlier today. No team is going to do that. Absolutely not. You would have to find a very, very low football IQ team. Like maybe you could have pawned him off to Bill O'Brien back in the day, but Bill O'Brien, you can't make a deal with him anymore. So
no, damn it. Where is he? Come on, Bill. Somebody give him a job.
Yeah, can somebody rehire Art Shell? We could probably, take advantage of that guy too. But yeah, there are not a lot of Bill O'Briens around these days.
It sucks. Well, and real quick, got a donation coming up here from Fat Daddy Stacks. Thank you for the $5 donation, Fat Daddy. He says, with the Bucks and Rams success, I wonder if the NFL is leading a media drama thing with the quarterbacks, meaning build a team and then bring a blue chip quarterback. What do you think about that,
Maybe. I try not to get too caught up in the idea that a couple of years means a trend. Like, yes, the last two teams have built great rosters and then found the QB. Like they've acquired the QB who had already established himself elsewhere. But just because it happened twice in a row, I'm a little hesitant to call that an established trend. But we'll see where it goes. It's definitely plausible. I'm not ready to say that's the new way to do things, but it probably is better to build a team before you get the quarterback. We've talked about this before on stream. Bringing in the quarterback to go get killed by a bad offensive line doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's why if we really are going to draw like I said earlier, if you're really going to roll with Drew Lock this season, then go ahead and throw Stone Forsythe out there, throw Ethan Posick out there. And if Drew Lock gets CTE, that's okay. I mean, he some people are just meant to be crash test dummies, and he's one of them.
Yeah. Sorry, Drew. I'm sorry, man. We got to do what we got to do as we go forward. It's for the greater good.
Yeah, he'll be well paid. He'll be well paid for it, man.
Yeah, he'll be a well paid crash test dummy. And I tend to lean along with you on this, Brendon. This is a sample size of data so far. Let's give ourselves a little bit more time to figure out what truly is that trend. And I also don't think there's every year that you're going to get one of these quarterbacks always sliding onto the market every single year. I think it's just been a weird recent couple of years with Brady sort of guiding these guys like Moses through the desert in this approach to some of these quarterbacks. Like, you can do this. You can do this now.
I blame LeBron. LeBron does this every year. He's like, will I stay? Will I go? You better do what I want you to do or else I'm out of here. Everything bad in sports generates from LeBron James over the last however long he's been in the league.
I'm not, I might tend to agree with you a little bit on this because this stuff drives me nuts with just the drama stuff. Definitely with all that, we've talked a little bit about that. Just like, come on, let's give it a break, folks. Enough with this stuff. Quarterbacks. I liked it when you guys were just nerds who, people may have paid me funny. Look at that nerd. He just loves football. Gosh. So we've got this. Well, first, before we get to the 9th pick, and I think we can put kind of some of the Bobby Wagner and Wilson stuff to bed here. Fire sale. It's a fire sale. Are you? You did a lot of delving into this with your video series about the pills over the course of this at the end of the year here. When this comes to your pill scenario of full fire sale, did you go full fire sale really? And I don't remember. I remember a couple of them, but I don't remember you going full fire sale. And I'm talking, Brendon, I'm going DK. I'm going Tyler. I'm going everything, nothing really defensively, even Damian Lewis if there's value, right? Whatever you
Nobody who is currently on a rookie deal needs to go in a fire sale in my mind. So that includes Metcalf. I know he'll be extended soon in all likelihood, but you don't got to do that. I don't see any need to do that. I didn't ignore the possibility. I think it's still on the table, and maybe you could get some insane haul for Metcalf. But you definitely don't need to. I don't believe that at all. I think that, I was also operating under the belief that Tyler Lockett was stuck here. I thought we took that blood oath with him. Spotrac actually recently corrected their site. They said that we thought Lockett was going to be 31 million dead if you moved him now. Apparently it's only 13. Now that's still a lot, but it's a little more believable.
I read a story today that could even go down to 7 if they do it in a time frame of like there's a bonus kicking in, like a roster bonus kicking in here soon. And if that kicks in, that's what will then take it to that 13 million mark, but that you can get it down 6 less even beyond that if you trade him inside that span, which, and I know what you're saying on DK. The one thing I wonder though, Brendon, is if he goes, I've given you 3 years production on a second round deal, I'm due my extension, I'm going to be a problem if I don't get my extension. And they force that hand of they either got to do it or make the trade. As is now, like you said, we're seeing the new LeBron method applied here. Let's call it the LeBron method. And that's being what we're seeing here a little bit. So if that is the case, Brendon, and the numbers now with Tyler, let's just say for the sake of this argument, Brendon, DK presses in such a way. What would be your then approach with those two guys specifically at that point on what you do next?
I would extend Metcalf. I still believe that guy's special. I don't think that you can always just treat an NFL team like a hedge fund. At a certain point, you do have to go, you know what? This guy's really special. Let's give him the money and figure out the rest later. He'll get over it if he has to deal with a bad quarterback for a year. He's going to be making $20 million a year. He will live. So as for Lockett, to me, it's actually a little binary. Over the next week, the Seahawks need to either trade for Deshaun Watson or trade Tyler Lockett. If you don't get that franchise quarterback, I don't think Lockett has value. He's getting older. To me, he already looks like a player who's going to not age super gracefully. I don't see him catching touchdowns at 40 like Jerry Rice or something like that. I just don't see it. He might not be good by the time he's like 35 or even 34. I'm not speaking poorly of Lockett. I just don't see it.
No, I don't think you are at all.
So to me, if you are not going to go get that franchise quarterback ready to go out of the box now, then move Lockett. That's kind of my feelings on it. Keeping Lockett just to have a Teddy Bridgewater tier quarterback or even worse, no point.
Agreed 100%. And that's, I do, we align on this. I wish folks, I wish we would give you some more disagreement between me and Brendon on this stuff, but we're in alignment. I've long been a guy saying DK is for me a guy who's a foundational piece on this team going forward. He's not like D. Eskridge, who came onto this team at 24 years old as he entered into the draft. He came in at 21. He's just, I think he's actually like if he's like an inch younger than Eskridge, or he's like just right about his age, or they're very close in age. So for me, he's just entering into that prime period where he's ready to explode. And I think there's a lot, especially if they can find a way to peel some of the double teams off his back, a way for him to tap into that level of production, as we go ahead, Brendon.
Right. Well, if you want to find something we can disagree about, apparently, I was told I didn't watch your whole stream last night. I know you streamed until really late. I do know you were talking a little bit about Deshaun Watson, and you were a little more pessimistic about it, apparently. We could spend a couple of minutes on that, but
I did. Yeah. Oh, that's on my question list for you. So let's we'll
get into Deshaun Watson.
Let's get into it. Let's get into this. Well, I was not necessarily, I was pessimistic in the realm of, I don't think I was pessimistic. I told everybody I was in favor of it. So I may have had, so as far as people were telling me, maybe I said something like the chances of it happening, because I think that there's some other things that have to go in play beyond just, does Seattle want them or not? But I do think Seattle's one of those teams that can compete. They have the ammunition that I think the competing teams, Brendon, may not have. What are your thoughts on it, though?
I have a few different thoughts. I will say this: if you trade for Watson and only give up draft picks, then a lot of the money that you had goes bye-bye, because you didn't save any money in the Wilson trade for the moment.
Right.
Now, you're saving money compared to what you were giving Wilson in the long run, but for this year, trading for Watson because his contract is really weird. I don't know what's up with that thing, but it was like 156 million, 25 guaranteed, which I don't know how that came to be, but there are very low guarantees in that deal. It was very, very odd to me. But anyway, So yeah, Deshaun Watson, if you're going to get him, then you do need to, then you can kind of, Teron Armstead and guys like Ben Jones, they're back on the menu, right? You can actually say, okay, we've got the veteran QB. Let's build up the team. Let's go get Clowney. Let's go get Akeem Hicks, etc. I think that we are probably on the list of teams that will go after him. The main thing to me is that with everything we know about Pete Carroll, is he really going to be like, okay, we're going to go get our ass kicked all year this year. We're just going to take the year off. Don't worry about competing so much. Let's just take our 4-win season. No, that's not Pete. Even if the roster is not great, he's going to do everything he can to try to find a way to win as much as he can. So Watson would be one of the main ways to do that.
And I think too, if this is the question we'd ask too, is you're getting Watson. Maybe this is the thing that makes a lot of people revolt, because they would love to not revolt, but makes them like want to throw up a little bit. But I'm sorry, this is what you might have to do if you're doing this, which is you're giving up 2 first-round picks and a second and maybe a little something else. He's coming in with no bonus money on the hip. You have him on just base. Mm-hmm. There is kind of the thought process, where I'm going with this, where you're putting him on a contract extension.
He's got 3 years left on that deal. I know that it's happened before, but does he really have a leg to stand on there? Especially with all this.
This might be my point. The leverage situation. You as the team can come to him and say, look, you have no bonus money left on this deal. We can come back to you now. We're not giving you some Mahomes contract 10 years with all your track record here and the fact that we're coming to you early on this. But we'll come to you early if you give us some relief this year early on, so we can better build the team up right now. I know I'm going wide out the box on this, but from the standpoint of Deshaun at that point, he gets a little more guaranteed money instantaneously as opposed to waiting the time to get it. Seattle gets the relief initially that they want in that situation to get an Armstead, like you just talked about. And if you're going for it, it's not a bad way to go for it in that direction of things at that point.
Yeah, okay. You're kind of turning me around to it a little bit here, but the contract that he's on, that you would get him on, if you traded for him, would certainly not be bad. And I don't think he would have too much to complain about. This is a guy who hasn't played football in a year.
Yeah.
So
You're not the only reason you would do it. You wouldn't do it as a reward to Deshaun or because you want to do a long-term commitment. It would be as a way to keep the door open back up. Because as you just said, the Russell Wilson trade, while you saved the $11 million, it was actually a net $750,000 negative to you because of all you took on board wide, from the draft picks to Shelby Harris to Noah Fant to Drew Lock. That negates that savings. And while you do save the 16.6 with Bobby, if we're talking about being in a go for it mode, you're going to need not just a Teron Armstead. You're going to need that center. You're going to need probably another tight end, a free safety, cornerbacks, maybe linebacker at this point. We're down that right now as well. And obviously some of this can be accomplished in the draft, but there is only so much money. And we've seen it can get swallowed up very quickly, especially if you're paying Armstead some $95 million deal where he's breaking the bank.
yeah, that is one thing that put me off the Watson thing just a little bit after really looking into it. You're not going to have a lot of money to build the team up after you get him as of right now. Maybe you could do something about that. But if you don't want to punt on 2022, it's probably the only way. I don't think Jameis Winston is going to come in here and put the team on his back and lead us to greatness or anything like that. I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to do that. I don't see anybody else that you could expect to get unless you hit the lottery with the right rookie quarterback, which it happens, but I don't know if I see him in this draft.
And I think a Malik Willis is going to come in and be able to have a Russell Wilson-like effect, even if he was at the same place as Russell Wilson, because this roster is not in the same place as the roster was for Russell Wilson when he walked into the door. So you're not competing with Willis being the best case scenario in this draft. Even that guy's not getting you up into a competing state early on to me because you have so much still work to do. But if you had an elite quarterback come in here who could overcome some certain things and whose skill set does fit to this offense, hand to glove, just saying it's if you make that move already to throw the draft picks down, you've made the commitment. And if the commitment's made and he is on the 3-year deal, but you can take that down from, what is it, $35 million, I think is his base this year or something like that, is his cap hit, $40 million, 35, 40 million,
I think it's 35.
Okay, so $35 million, you come in and you say, okay, we're going to convert this to base over the next 4 or 5 years. He's only going to be 27 years old. You now have him on contract for the next 4 or 5 years. You got a team-friendly contract at that point to then allot the guys you want. It just, to me, it makes sense if you're going to make that trade. You're going to take the swing, take the full swing. Don't go halfway and just kind of pull back the bat as you're getting it through the zone. Go all the way through and do your little Ken Griffey Jr. finish, flare finish, flare finish move, What's the farthest you go for Deshaun Watson?
Well, this is kind of tricky here because I know the Houston Texans already turned down 3 firsts and 3/3. Now, obviously, circumstances have changed a little bit.
Right.
But I would probably give up the 2 firsts and the 2 seconds you got from Denver, but I don't think I'm going beyond that really. Like if Houston is still trying to play hardball here and they're like, we want all your stuff because this is a young franchise quarterback in his prime, then I would definitely be willing to walk away from that. But I would probably go the 2 firsts and 2 seconds from Denver.
What if
because then you flipped Wilson for a younger, probably better, slightly cheaper version of Wilson in many ways. And you've also gotten Harris and Fant out of it.
Right. What if they say, like it's something that's still high, but rather like, give us the 3rd round pick this year? Is that your hard line? Or
I'm not going to draw a line in the sand about day 2, day 3 pick. You got to have a little bit of room to negotiate here. You've got to be willing to bend a little bit.
All right. So the one guy you didn't mention, I noticed, and I know why you didn't, because it's kind of like Voldemort. It's the evil by which name you shall not speak. And I'm sure it leaves you shuddering in the night, as it's made me almost on top of the fear and at what comes with Russell's departure is the potential arrival of this guy. Kirk, Magic Man, Cousins. You didn't mention him. I noticed there, Brendon. You had a litany of guys you went through on your list there, but no Kirk Cousins.
Is he a free agent?
No.
Okay, yeah. First of all, that you would actually have to trade for him.
Yeah.
To me, the only reason why you would do that would be if you plan on trading a draft pick for him, and then you plan to let him go in free agency next year, and then you get that draft pick back because of the compensation thing. So then you're basically saying we're going to rent Kirk Cousins for a year to hold the fort together, but we're just mainly doing it because we can recoup the value of the trade you give up pretty easily. So if you're doing it like that, then I got nothing bad to say about it. Kirk Cousins is not bad, but he's certainly not winning a Super Bowl. And at the end of the day, like that's just another great way to stay in the middle. And I'm a little tired of that. We've been doing that for a while.
I guess let me patent the question in this way to you, Brendan. If you look at this recent history of this front office and Coach Carroll, and they're going and they make a swing for a trade like Cousins, who I do not believe you will get for a third round pick, nor do I believe you get him for a second round pick. It will only, I think, cost you a first round pick. But I indeed think it will be the asking price of a first round pick by the team that tries to pull him. If he goes to the Colts, it's going to be a first round pick. Comes here, it's a first round pick. I don't like that. I don't think he's worth that. I don't want him for that, Brendan. But here's where the nightmare scenario comes in. You make the first round pick trade for him. You're not doing that for a 1-year rental. That's not why you would put that in place. You're doing that because you're going to now make a commitment to Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I'm absolutely not doing that. No way, no how, no interest whatsoever. He had a pretty sweet situation in Minnesota and didn't do a whole heck of a lot with it. Remember, that team made the NFC title game with Case Keenum.
Right.
Was it Case Keenum?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's bad. I think he actually played pretty well last year, but no, I'm not seeing it.
We've been down here.
Not into that.
Yeah, I'm not either. But can you also agree? It's like this would be almost a worst case scenario type situation to go and make that kind of trade and put that. And remember, Kirk doesn't take no discount. Kirk's not a discount guy. How you like that paying me $45 million per year? I don't like that, Kirk. I don't like that at all. I don't want to do that. So to me, it's my growing big fear in this whole situation that's looming like a dark sun over the planet of like, dear God, please don't let Carroll pull that trigger because he likes him. He likes him, Brendan.
Yeah.
It's 10 years it goes back, this silent love affair he's had for him. While Russell's been on the sideline, he's looked longingly over at him over on Minnesota's side.
Yeah, if we do that's getting into territory of like this. It's going to be hard for me to watch next year. Not because Cousins is bad, but because it's just like, okay, what's the plan? What are we doing?
Oh, I have to bring it up, Brendan, because it's like I'm almost hoping I can kind of have the effect if we bring it up so it makes sure that it doesn't happen. But my God, that's my one where I'm like, please no, not him. We've had the Dave Craigs, the Matt Hasselbecks, the Kirk Cousins. They all kind of fit into the same mold of things. All right, let's go a little more forward here with this to this 9th pick. And let me acknowledge a couple donos here. Charles Riley with the $10 donation. Thank you, Charles. He says, Greg Olson went in hard on the coaching staff of the Hawks today, talking with Cowherd. He basically says Pete lives to punt and defend. He has the punter without the D for a good spell now. Did you hear those thoughts? I heard him talking a couple days ago with Cowherd, but
yeah. Okay, am I just living in a bubble here, or do other supposedly elite head coaches have a lot of players talk bad about them when they leave their team? Because it sure seems like a lot of people leave the shadow of Carroll and immediately run to the first person who will listen and start talking about how Pete is not good. Mm-hmm. So, man, we've heard this kind of stuff a lot lately, haven't we?
Yeah, we have, and I think you're onto something in that it's telling. In that, when you hear this from former players in this way, maybe one guy, it's like, okay, it's sour grapes from this guy, or that, and you expect some of that to some degree, especially a coach that's been around for 10 years. But when you hear it from guys that are both the guys out on small deals and here for a long period of time, you start to go, you do start to wonder with that, Brendan, a little bit.
Yeah. What's the saying? If one person calls you a horse, punch him in the face. If a second person calls you a horse, kick him in the shins. If a third person calls you a horse, go get fitted for a bridle. It's something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I love that saying. There's another turn on that one too about being an a-hole. If you meet an a-hole in the morning, he's an a-hole. If you meet a-holes all day, you're the a-hole. Mm-hmm. Well, and look, I'm glad Greg Olson is speaking up. I'm glad we're getting truth out there because Lord knows, Brendan, our Seahawks, our Seattle media in this situation dropped this ball, in my opinion, considerably. You have some places like San Francisco, for instance, that broke the bond scandal. while it broke it down, while he's going through and ripping home runs, while it was not in the best interest of the media to do so, they came out and pushed it. And I do wonder a little bit, Brendan, with the media here and some of how they would laugh at people bringing up the potential of Russell Wilson trade now for going back a good year to year and a half. Whether or not, you know, someone within, I'm not trying to throw shade at people and doing their job, but you guys were being snarky and arrogant out there in the Seattle media about how us people like us that would bring up the potential of this being impossible in the hopes that we could avert it. Could we have averted it if you did less snarky talking, less of the yippee yapping and more of the maybe actual honest consideration? And I don't know, God forbid, maybe a little bit of journalism.
Maybe. I mean, the Seattle media is not very good at this stuff. We know that. I don't know if it would have resulted in uncovering the great Russell Wilson trade plan, because obviously this thing had been in the works. I don't think Pete Carroll woke up 2 days ago and was like, you know what? I feel like trading Wilson now. I didn't even consider it before, but you know what? I just decided I'm going to trade him. This had to have been in the works for a while, because we already know that Philly and Washington got shot down. Not by the team, apparently, although maybe the team did shoot down Washington on maybe they didn't like the offer. I did hear the offer was kind of tepid, like 2 first-rounders and Chase Young, something like that. And Chase Young, by the way, just tore his ACL. I'm not impressed.
Yeah, no, that's not he's not I know he's the number one, but after the ACL and still he was showing signs and flashes, but he was not yet at that like Myles Garrett type dominant point where you go, oh yeah, you definitely want to he's worth the value of 2 first-round picks or whatever at that point. So that makes some sense. You heard that we turned down the Washington offer? Because I had heard that it was Russell turned down the Washington offer.
I've heard both.
Okay.
Maybe both sides turned down the offer at the same time. I don't know, but my understanding was that, and I have to believe we would turn down that offer. That's a terrible offer if that was actually the offer.
Yeah, that's not nearly close enough. Keeping in mind Washington, it's just like people mentioned last year, the Chicago Bears offer. Oh, we should have taken the Bears offer last year. The difference between last year at 20 overall and last year's draft versus this year's draft and number 9 overall, much better value on top of the other compensation you're getting here, in my opinion. I don't think that Chicago offer was better, especially the players involved. I think Akeem Hicks, Kyle Fuller are not as good as the combination of Noah Fant and Shelby Harris.
Yeah, I do agree. That is a good point. I would argue that this draft class might also be better for the Seahawks' particular needs. That's debatable, of course. But last year was all about the top quarterbacks. This year is more about the offensive linemen and the edge rushers and the maybe even cornerbacks. So that's subjective. And oh, by the way, Kyle Hamilton. But I think you could argue this draft class is a little better for the Seahawky side of things, where Carroll wants to build this team.
Agreed. A lot of guys that fit the metrics: big, long, fast. Just what the explosive, the metrics that they tend to lean towards in prospects, kind of above other teams in certain aspects of that. Leland Kimball with the $2 donation says, punt on 2022, not going anywhere. Commit to a rebuild. I mean, I think it's like Brendan said, and I think you're on this line, Brendan. If it's not Deshaun Watson, then lean towards that rebuild, I think. And we're hearing different things, right? We're hearing Brendan 2-year rebuild, and we're hearing they're going to try to go get Deshaun Watson. And I think those things are 2 separate things that they might be trying to do. It's sort of like building already the thought out there of, if we can't get Watson, prepare yourself for that. It's going to be this.
Yeah. And Deshaun Watson has been the topic du jour in my streams for the last couple of days. And it's look, I'll say this. If we got Watson, I'm not guaranteeing it would work, but it's the one thing that would get me excited, because Pete Carroll does not need to sell me on how good Deshaun Watson is on a football field. I can see that. I see what he did with Bill O'Brien. So I have no doubt about that guy being one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And we're also having the discussion of whether or not Jody Allen would be okay with that trade. And did you know, you probably heard this from somewhere, but we were talking about this last night. She has been accused of sexual harassment. Did you know this?
Yeah.
I did not know this until last night. This completely flew under my radar. And I actually read some of the depositions. I don't know what to say about that.
Did she go all in? Did she grab him by the?
Apparently, she had bodyguards, and made them wear outfits. I'm not going to say any more than that because this is a family-friendly show.
Oh man. Well, you got all that money, man. I guess money buys anything, I think is what the mentality starts going through your head on that one, doesn't it? But you have a
Yeah.
point to this. You have a point. I'm sorry. Don't let me, it's funny. It is hilarious.
Yeah, it is.
It's like something out of a television show, a billionaire woman that's like sexually harassing her bodyguards.
Yeah.
But she might be more open to a Mr. Watson's. She might be a little more understanding, right? We're about empathy in this world, and maybe perhaps Miss Allen will be a little, Deshaun, it's okay. I get it. Come here, Deshaun. Come here. Go put that on. Go put that on, Deshaun. Yeah. Put that.
I mean, she did hire Chauncey Billups, right? And there was a whole thing about that. Now, that one's I think that one's a lot less, like, that was something that happened a long time ago and was never confirmed, and it was one thing. Deshaun Watson is like 300 things.
Yeah.
Or no, I think the actual number is 22. I don't want to get into hyperbole here, but
is it only 22, man? I thought it was going to.
I think it's 22,
36, or that. But you can't keep track after a while when they start running in. It just becomes a snail trail.
Yeah, but we'll see. I mean, there are a few people who feel like it's going to happen. Like Sherman, look, Richard Sherman doesn't have inside information. I take everything he says with less than a grain of salt. I didn't buy it at all when he started saying, I think the Niners or Seahawks are going to sign Stephon Gilmore. It doesn't make any sense to me. Two teams that run zone, they're going to spend big on a corner. No. Yeah. But there are other people who are like, yeah, this is totally going to happen. And you put the pieces of the puzzle together, it does make some sense.
It does add up to me for me as well. The organization hammered this fan base with the 1-2 punch of Wilson and Wagner in the same day, and talk of Lockett moving, and they're going to need a win this offseason somewhere. And while there will be blowback for Watson when people start seeing him play on the football field, I have a feeling a lot of the people piping up about how a horrible human being he is, and I can understand those people that take that sentiment. I wouldn't argue with you. I get it. But as a player, as Brendon just said, this is not the equivalent of Russell Wilson. This is a different player. This is a player playing better. Let's just call it was playing better before he was suspended last year than Russell Wilson. A younger player, a player who's adept at the short and intermediate passing game, the one place Russell Wilson mainly struggled within. Paul Third with a $2 donation. Sorry, were you going to say something, Brendon? My bad.
No.
Thank you for the $2 donation. Says Watson isn't getting quote unquote off tomorrow. Nice. Mm-hmm. See what you did there, Paul. See what you did there. Who do you think guided this decision, Brendon? Do you think this was, if you had to lay money on the table, did Jody push the trade, push for the trade, Carroll push for the trade, Schneider push for the trade, or was it all their three minds sort of coming together and saying this is the right decision?
I feel like it was Schneider. I do kind of feel like it was Schneider. I think that he's like looking at the calendar and he's like, 300 more days until I have to talk to Mark Rodgers again. God damn it. Get him out of here before I have to do that again. It's like looking at the calendar and counting down how many days until your root canal. You're just like, another day closer.
Oh, and you heard the story, of course, of him cussing him out on the phone when Rodgers called last time. There was a time, that recent call they had, where he was on the phone and Schneider literally cussed him out. And Schneider's just kind of, you don't get that impression, that kind of guy. But yeah, I agree with you. There's something, Rodgers twisted that nipple in a way that has got him none too happy, and I think opened that door, despite, again, Schneider being the guy who advocated for Wilson's drafting over Carroll initially. Mm-hmm. I think it really did sour over that time period.
And I don't think Pete's down with taking a rebuilding. You can't tell me that 71-year-old Pete Carroll is going to be like, yeah, let's just not bother competing this year. Let's just be 4-13. So I think he would have kind of preferred to keep Wilson, just so, hey, we can win 10 games and at least we can, win 10 games, because that's an accomplishment now. But I think that is how he thinks about these things.
I agree. Probably an indication that Snyder got some of that control wrestled from Coach Carroll during this offseason Jody Snyder meetup, maybe, where that would have occurred, where Carroll got it moved over a little bit. Charles Rather, the $5 donation, says, are we supposed to pretend massage parlors don't exist? Something tells me these masseuses weren't straight from the Ukraine and they are cash grabbing. Well, we never know. We'll let the judicial system play out as it does, and we will see how it goes, Charles. But thank you for the $5 donation. And it's not going to preclude me from being willing to bring on Watson. It's there are other fences that might. This one just for me happens to be one where I go, okay, it's not great. It's a bad look. It's awful for him. It tarnishes his legacy.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a real good football player. Paul.
Yeah. I mean, we could be like the Jailblazers, right? We could have an owner who does that stuff and a star quarterback who does that stuff.
No, that's true.
Hey, that was a great brand.
It's at least congruent.
Yeah.
You know?
It rhymes. Jailblazers.
That's right. The Jailblazers. I love it. We got what's going to be our moniker here with the Seahawks. One can only wonder with all that you combine that one. Paul Third with the $2 donation says compare Russ and Cousins stats the last 3 years. Cousin puts up his share of stats. Don't get me wrong there. I mean,
it's I mean, box score stats. Yeah. There's more to it than that. Like Wilson's stats last year looked great. They did. Go look at Wilson's raw numbers from last year. They look great. But we watched all the games. We know that he was coming up short in many ways. Like, that Titans game last year is a perfect example. The numbers for Wilson in that game are stellar, but you watch that game, he basically took the entire second half off. He gets the ball in overtime, needing only a field goal to win, and he goes backwards. So to act like the box score is the end all be all, I mean, we're beyond that now. We can see things, and we're aware of things beyond just the box score.
Yeah, and I don't know if Paul, you were saying that Cousins is better than Russ to bring him in as an improvement, but I would say the same thing. I just think there's the stats that are put up there, especially for a team that hasn't been winning a lot, let's say, right? So you have a team that's behind a lot of games, meaning they're not able to run as consistently as often. So then their quarterback gets a few more attempts and things look a little bit better. But we've played them a ton of times in recent years, the Vikings with Cousins. We played him in Washington, and it's not that he's a bad quarterback. But I think that when you talk about bringing a quarterback on who then you have to then invest in, I've got to give up draft capital for this guy. I got to then pay him not mid-tier quarterback rates. It'd be great if there was a quarterback tier system in the NFL, Brendan, where you're getting a guy who, you know what, Cousins, you're worth $26 million a year, man. That's what we're going to pay you. And then you at least have built within your budget the guy of, okay, we're not paying him the 45-50 of Deshaun Watson. So we got the extra 20 million to move around now, but that's not the way the NFL works. You take a Cousins on, he's going to be if he's the next man up and he's just about to be the next man up, you now have to be in bed with doing the $50 million for him. And it's to me, that's just, especially knowing that stat that any quarterback making more than 20%, 15% of the cap over the last 30 years is not winning a Super Bowl. And I think it's just a team that's in disarray right now. That's not to me, that wouldn't be the path. I don't know if that's what you were saying with it, Paul, but thank you for the donation. Sorry, we got a couple more here, Brendan. Charles Riley, the $5 donation says, thank you. We got all the clear to get Watson. Jody be Jody. Wonder what she did to Pete. Taking advantage of an old man is creepy.
Yeah. I guess all these like super duper rich people are just kind of like out there. Like I looked at Jody and I saw somebody who I would never, ever have thought would be involved in anything like that. I thought she was very, kind of milquetoast, and I never would have guessed. I was reading this stuff last night and I'm like, wow, okay. I guess I'm a really bad judge of character.
It's the old power absolutely corrupts. Having all that money, I think it's just you have to work hard to not lean in a little bit of that direction when it comes to just even small things like that. Not like she's like Vader or something here, but that you have a little maybe more tendency to kind of just feel like you're a little more I can do what I want. I mean, I'm worth billions.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast once and they were trying to determine what the amount of money was, but they were basically saying once you get to a certain amount of money, you lose your mind and go crazy. Like they were just looking at this list of all the richest people and they're like, these people are like Jack Dorsey, the guy who used to run Twitter. That guy like goes to sleep he travels to Egypt and like sleeps in a sarcophagus for 3 weeks. It's just like, what is up with these people? So they were trying to figure out what the amount of money was that made you go crazy, but they didn't quite get there. But it was like, there's some number where your mind just snaps.
A couple $100 million, you're in at that point. I think at that point, you're gone. I agree. That's where you'd probably go into that lane. Paul Third, following up on the donation, says with the $5. Thank you again for the donos. Paul says, just saying numbers are similar, but Cousins is the prototypical quarterback, not a backyard football style player. A solid point from that standpoint. He would potentially operate this offense a little bit better than Russell in moving the chains. We probably both agree there, right, Brendan? But then you
Oh
might
yeah.
you might be a little bit go backwards a little bit in the clutchness and then in the ability to hit some of Cousins got a good deep ball, but it's not in the same realm, I would say, as Russell Wilson. So you are then taking a little bit of a back step to that. So it's like 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. Would you kind of agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I do. Although I will say, maybe I think that part of this trade had been, when was the last time Wilson had like a game-winning drive or a fourth quarter comeback? It had started to like be a while. I think 2020 against the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
So even that was starting to diminish a little bit.
It's
He
true.
wasn't that guy who was always coming through at the end of the games.
Yeah. Good
Last
point.
year, he gets the ball against the Bears down by 1 point, needing a field goal. He can't even cross midfield. And this is stuff that he used to do 5 times a year. So maybe that's part of it too. Maybe we can't really say that one is at this point significantly more clutch than the other. So my thing is, Cousins isn't he about the same age as Wilson?
Exactly.
I mean, he's going to start losing. He's going to start losing his physical tools as well, and he does depend somewhat on his physical tools.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as much as Wilson, but I don't see the upside here. There's nothing but downside.
And it's Paul, it's beyond the player, I think, on this one. For me, it's the layering in of the cost and understanding Cousins' history of the guy's been paid more at the quarterback position, I think, than any quarterback in the NFL right now. He's made more in his career because he plays this game as well as anybody's played it as far as making sure he maximizes out his value. And right now at this point, after dealing with the quarterback the last 8 years that has maximized his value at every turn and done things in negotiation like ask for 20% of the salary cap, I'm really out on, if I'm going to be paying that kind of money, I better have a difference maker at the position. I better have a Deshaun Watson type or a Josh Allen type or top of the top at it. I don't need to have a guy who's just kind of barely a little bit better than average. That to me is where the price gets just too much for me. Paul does say, though, with another $2 donations, he also does make another good point, Brendan. Cousins is also 6'3", and he can reach the top shelf.
Brock Osweiler was 6'7", didn't help
Yeah.
him much.
He
So
could get up to the third shelf.
yeah. I again, I don't think Cousins is bad. I just don't think he's right for this team. He's not putting the team on his back at this point. And by the way, in Minnesota, he always had some pretty primo things to work with. Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, now Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, like pretty good cuts of meat.
They've done a good job in recent years too. One of the reasons they've been, I think, as good as they've been is they've kept that offensive line up to snuff. It's never been great or one of the top 5 units, but they've always seemingly been investing into it and making it a good line unit as well. So he has a lot to work with there in Minnesota. And look, Zimmer hated him at the end. They were supposedly getting in like screaming matches or something near the end of his time there. And certainly, you go now to a third organization. It seems like some other teams are telling you Washington didn't want to pay him. Minnesota's out after a couple of years. You mentioned the other guy got the team further than Cousins has in other years there with maybe a lesser talented roster. Boy, it's hard, but I get where you're coming from,
Yeah.
Paul. I'm not going to discount the fact that Cousins is not, he's not bad. It's just that, man, you want to go better or you want to rebuild. You want to go way better or go rebuild. Last little dono here, and I got a couple other questions I want to push forward to you on this number 9 pick, Brendan. Charles Riley, $5 donation. It's the meat is side as if I couldn't drive 2 blocks and get a handy or a shandy. A shandy is cheaper because it's a trans.
We're gonna get in trouble again.
Charles could get us in trouble. Paul with the $5 donation. My God, you guys are being so kind. Thank you so much. Is agreed, not on Cousins. Just saying, if it did happen, it's not the end of the world. Boy, we're hitching our wagons to Cousin at that point. It is the end of the world for me, Paul, because you're paying him that money. And once you pay him that money, we know from the data you're not getting to a Super Bowl and you have all that work to do. You're not bringing Cousins here with this solid offensive line across the board and good running backs behind him and everything's all set and ready, a defense that's ready to roll. Maybe it's ready to roll. We don't know. There's a lot of work that has to be done on this roster as we go forward. And so you're now paying a quarterback top of the market where you're not necessarily in a state to compete necessarily, unless I guess they go in on like I'm out advocating them to do with Watson, where they decide they're just going to go in on the offensive line and they're going to kick the can to the bottom of the road. But boy, if you're going to, Brendan, can you imagine saying we're going to go all in? This is a team where we're going to sacrifice future years so we can ride with Kirk Cousins. That's
tell me if I'm taking this a little too far. I think I'd rather have Drew Lock start this year than Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I know you're not. I mean, that's because again, it's not the vacuum of which guy's better or which would you rather have. It's that you are signing him to an extension if you bring Cousins in because you can't get him for anything less, in my opinion, than a first round pick. And if you're going to give up that kind of assets, you're not doing it for a 1-year rental. You might if
Right.
he's a second round pick, you might if he's a third, but you're not if he's a first round pick. I'd offer even if it was a second round pick, you wouldn't be bringing him in for a rental. Not versus losing 4 years of club control on a really good player. The team wouldn't, I think, probably be doing that. But for me,
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes it the end of the world for me is I think that salary ends up killing you. I think you
Mm-hmm.
sign him for 45, 50 million and you're Dunsky. That puts you in no matter what he does as a player. And as Brendan just said, good chances are he starts to at least on a minor level erode. A little less mobility, already not the most mobile guy in the pocket. Maybe the arm strength starts to fall back just a hair, starts to wear down over the course of the year a little bit more as these late 30s guys tend to do. They always start out really strong and hot, and then it's like, oh, I'm kind of getting sore. Oh, my body's not bouncing back as quickly.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes it a bad. I'm sorry to go so far on that, Brendan, but that's what makes it to me the
Yeah.
end of the not end of the world, but a nightmare scenario from my standpoint, because it would really, to me, mire us in a 3 year, 4 period, prolong the rebuild, all that type of stuff.
Right.
All right, let's get to this ninth pick. Ninth pick in the draft, Brendan. Let's take out Malik Willis for a second. I don't know. Do you think he's really a guy they're looking at and targeting right now?
I think we're targeting him, but I find it very hard to believe you'd make him a top 10 pick. Some people have pointed out that you might have to,
Yeah,
but I don't think I'd be willing to do that. To me, he is a little bit of a project. I would not even look at him until late first round.
right. I agree. I agree with like what somebody told you on that. I've heard even somewhat of whispers now he might even go number 2 overall. And this
Mm-hmm.
is the problem is that this is a draft that has no quarterbacks in it at the top end of things. And he's the guy that is at least a guy you go, well, he's a first round pick. Like you said, he is a deep first round pick, but you go, okay, I can see at least a Lamar Jackson like first round pick element to him a little bit. Uh, but then there's nobody else that's close, and the scarcity drives up the value, and you're going to end up with him probably being pushed up even ahead of our pick. I think maybe they're targeting him. I do hope that I'd rather them maybe wait a year though, if you have to go as high as 9, Brendan, to take him, right? If you got to
Yeah,
go
I'm
there.
not. I'm not into that at all. No.
All right, so we could take a couple guys off the board here, and let me give you some options here. Okay, let's try to drive this down to a relatively accurate spot on number 9. Hutchinson's gone, right?
Right.
You're going to have, I would say, 2 of the top 3 left tackles off the board. Is that fair enough to say? Probably one of them remains by the time you're drifting into 9.
Well, you got Evan Neal,
Right.
Trevor Penning, and Charles Cross. Are those the top 3?
Top 3 are going off the board are going to be Charles Cross, Ike Awanooko,
Oh, Icky. I forgot about Icky.
and Penning's going to be probably the 4th guy off the board.
Okay. Um, that's my sense as well. I think
Okay.
that Ikem and Evan Neal will probably be off, and Charles Cross
Agreed.
may be the guy.
Okay, so let's keep that one chambered for a second. You're probably going to have one of a choice of Stingley and Gardner, not both, but one of a choice by the time that you get to 9. Would you agree on that?
Yes.
Okay, we've got that there. Hard to say on the pass rushers. Ajobi, for instance, I'm not sure exactly where he's going to go if he were to go up Thibodeau. Kind of hard to say. Let's say that one of the top end pass rushers is also there sitting there for you, Brendan. I'm interested to find out what happens with Kyle Hamilton here because his combine wasn't good. And it wasn't bad, but it just wasn't good for a guy you're talking about being picked up maybe in the top 5, let's say. And the 4.57 for a guy that's going to be a free safety, not a death knell, but again, a guy that's going to be maybe picked in the top 5, maybe enough to push him down. So for the moment, let's just say that Hamilton slides a little bit more on that basis of things. I give you those collection of guys, of feasible guys. Who's your pick? You're on the
I
clock.
th- I think I like the edge. I think I like the edge rusher. I want to
Okay.
get a stud to pair with Daryl Taylor. I want to bring back the old Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill, Chris Clemens pass rushes. And I think if you could get a bona fide blue chipper on the edge, that's my guy. If Evan Neal was there, I don't think I could pass him up, but I think I can force myself to pass up Charles Cross. And I don't really want the cornerbacks because this is still a Carroll-led team for the moment. And I would say Kyle Hamilton, he's on the list. I can't put him above the edge, though.
It's fair enough. That is the true modern value, how it derives of it's positional value. Not every position is weighted the same in the modern NFL, especially if you look at it through the analytics lens of things. All right, I got three guys then here for you. I have a Joby. He's only played a couple of years. Raw, but that diamond's already shining in its rawness. To me, draws some comparisons to Chandler Jones. You got Thibodeau, twitchy, edge rusher, questions off the field. Does he really love football? Takes plays off, but when he turns it on, it's like Von Miller. Then you've got Karlaftis, the bruiser, the power guy, the guy theoretically, Brendon, who could be your strong side guy if you wanted to flip Darrell Taylor back up over to the Leo. One of the more proficient pass rushers, one of the more complete pass rushers in this draft, though missing some of the twitchy elements of the first two.
I have to admit, I really, I don't know. I found the fact that Thibodeau went to the combine to talk about his NFTs so hilarious. I kind of want to take him and I kind of want to buy his jersey. I don't know. There's something about that to me. It's just like, what a legend. What an absolute legend.
Hell yeah.
To actually think it's a good idea to go to the combine and talk about your altcoin crap that's never going to amount to anything. I kind of love it. But man, you cannot afford to miss on this number 9 pick. Cannot.
Mm-hmm.
So, God, is Karlaftis really the guy because he's more of a sure thing? Are we saying that Jermaine Johnson's not going to be there?
Karlaftis is the most sure thing, but you're looking at a guy with a Ryan Kerrigan type upside, as opposed to, like I said, with the first two guys, their bust factor is both bigger. With Ajobi, he doesn't play the run, but then he is absolutely for only playing for a couple of years. And if you watch him, man, it's just to me shades of the way Chandler gets off of blocks. As he rounds the edge. And then Thibodeau's got that twitchy stuff, that explosion off of his stance that just nobody else has in this draft, or really, there might be some guys kind of close to it. There's some freak guys here, but he's also got a little bit of the size too. He's not just, I got that speed and then don't have the length, or he's got all the other stuff they'd look for in the Leo. He's essentially prototype Coach Carroll Leo and what he would look for. But it's an interesting, it's a hard choice. Karlaftis, though, might be the cleanest. So he's the guy with the floor.
Are we saying that Jermaine Johnson's not going to be available?
He is. And maybe it's like a Baker's choice on this one to me, but because both Ajobi and Johnson to me don't play the run consistently. They're both like, we just want to get after the quarterback type guys, and they're both really, really similarly good in what they do. Where there's some athleticism, there's some good hand fighting, there's some good bend. It's like they're not that, like Thibodeau's got that one quotient that stands out where it's like, damn, he just pops. But with those guys, it's more of a couple of things coming together with them. They're going to go nearly around the same area. And there might be some NFL teams, to your point on this, Brendon, that value Johnson over Ajobi. For me right now, it's just a general preference of going to Ajobi because I like that. He's only played 2 years. This guy, he's just started playing football and he's already dominant at it. This is one of the things with Falele that I like. It's like I see the upside there, and I'm always leaning the upside when it comes to picks.
Yeah. I might like that too if you're taking 2022 off because you have time for him to grow into himself anyway.
Right.
Like you can kind of say, okay, this first year we know you're gonna kind of be maybe you're only gonna play 300 snaps, but that's okay.
Right.
If you're gonna take the year off, then okay, that's probably my guy. If you do make the Watson trade, then it doesn't matter because you're not gonna have the number 9 pick anymore. So
right.
I guess that's my guy after really thinking about it, but that is really tough.
Yeah,
I really kind of want to get on the ground floor of Thibodeau's altcoin, and if he comes to Seattle, that's going to be a lot easier. So
I know
it's hard to pass up.
I know you're going to be watching more film as we get closer to draft if it looks like we have that pick, and it's going to be interesting to see how you mold, because I go back and forth on these prospects. You start off with one way and then you watch a guy do something on a couple of games and you're like, well, God, he can do that. Especially we're talking this first pick in the 9th because it's so much more important than any pick that we've had in recent years. It's not you looking at a guy we might be taking a flyer on in the 3rd or 4th round. It's like, no, this is one of the best guys in the draft, and which one's the one that is the one we want to get right. But Thibodeau also didn't want to go to a state income tax. He didn't want to go to that as well, which we fit that bill as well. No state income tax here in Washington. So that would be work for his altcoin situation, and it would be, and he's a local kid. So you can't go wrong. we've got free agency coming up. One other thing I want to ask about you on this 9th pick, on just the general your strategy on it. Should this 9th pick at all, if you just keep your picks, okay, no trade goes down, and you're in rebuild phase. And this is pure rebuild question, should you then be allowing that pick to drive your decision making towards allow the second round to drive the first pick? Okay. And let me give you an example of what I mean by this. The Cincinnati Bengals last year were faced in the first round with the choice of Penny Sewell and Jamar Chase. But part of the reason why they took Jamar Chase, on top of the fact Burrow wanted him, was the fact that they were very confident into that next pick in the second round, that high second round pick that they possessed. They would then be able to go get their left tackle at that point, which indeed they were able to do with Jackson Carmon, who we can debate this a little bit on that, on the smartness of that, the drop off of a prospect that you're getting at that point, which is what's kind of derived in this question, Brendon, which is, do you let that, okay, look, if the best player on the available is a pass rusher right now, but we know Boy Mafe is going to be there at 9. And our value of Boy Mafe is he's not that far off of these Jermaine Johnson and Ajobi, really. He is off. He's just a tick down below him, but he's not that far off. Versus there isn't a free safety at number 9 or 10 that's on the same level of Hamilton.
That is an excellent point. That is excellent. It's not just Boy Mafe, too. I think Arnold Ebiketie probably going to go in that range as well.
Right.
And to me, he's also a guy who you can look at and go, this could be a long-term starter.
Right.
So that's an excellent point. I don't know if there's a left tackle you could get in the second round that really jumps off the page. Some people are saying Abraham Lucas, but I don't see him being a left tackle at any point.
No, he's a right. You keep right tackle, keep him there. We learned, folks, we move people out of positions all the time. Let's not do that. The guy's got all these snaps at college football at the right tackle position. The first thing you're not going to want to do is move him out of that. Let's not Damian Lewis him.
But that's a great point, and it's something that I'm going to have to consider more as time goes by. There was there are actually a couple safeties later in this draft who I were appealing to me as well, but this is a really good outside linebacker draft, I think. So that's something I'm going to have to think about a little bit more.
The kid out of Illinois might be there in the second round. And he is not that far off of Hamilton necessarily. He doesn't have the hitting power he does, but he's a playmaker back there. And Veron McKinley, kid out of Oregon that you could probably get in the 3rd or 4th round later, who has little shades of Earl. He's like Earl Thomas Light. A little bit in his playing style. Certainly that would appeal to Seattle. So those guys you could get late, and Hamilton, not necessarily as a safety, but just in general terms, and looking at of how you measure if you let that one dictate to the other. And it's I'm not sure I have an answer on it either, Brendon. I think it's just an interesting consideration as you look at the draft, and always in the hope, in my opinion, of trying to push for best player available as opposed to pushing for need. But in a way, taking that direction of it would be having you push towards need with that first pick, rather than necessarily the best player available. So it's interesting draft philosophy stuff, I guess. We've got Gal G with a $5 donation. Thank you, Gal G. Says, Seahawks never the same after their Super Bowl loss. Mr. Unlimited could never shake his past. Are you buying that? Did Russell Wilson get broken on that Super Bowl throw, Brendon?
Well, before he threw that interception, he was a bus driver. And after he threw that interception, he started posting MVP caliber seasons, like, what was it, 5 out of 6 years. So I definitely don't agree with that. I think that he became a much better player post the interception. Now, the team didn't enjoy the same success. There are a lot of reasons for that, but I don't think that was a big thing. No.
Yeah, I agree with the first part of what you're saying, Kyle. I definitely think the Super Bowl loss changed the trajectory of where this team went. I don't agree that it was all off of one play. I think that gets really overspoken. I think it's just the way that was lost, and all the fallout from that was too much. But I also think, to Brennan's point, Russell Wilson took his game to another level after that time period. He didn't fall off. He didn't go in a shell. He didn't become a fraction of what he was. He became near an MVP level candidate. Should have gotten MVP votes more than a couple of those years on a Seahawks team that was nowhere near as stacked as the Legion of Boom teams. But we'll see where Russell goes now going forward. Like I said, I have to think a little bit that this front office feels like a little bit of maybe his best days have been behind him in their willingness to trade within the conference, just the willingness to trade in general. It doesn't factor wholly, Brendon. I'm just saying maybe there's a little slice of that. If this is all being built up on a variety of things that they're balancing, budget, talent, how our team is, where Russell's at. Maybe that just kind of enters into it.
Yeah, I think if you want to argue that the Super Bowl broke anybody, it was Pete Carroll. He used to be a guy who took a lot of risks, and since that Super Bowl, he's to me is the guy who doesn't ever take risks, pretty much ever.
No, only when it's in desperation, right? Only when the
Yeah.
hand is forced of, the pass rush, it's next Sunday's the start of the season and we don't have any pass rush. Go make a crazy trade. It's only when that happens that he would actually get, as it has in the past, where they would just operate from, Percy Harvin, let's go take a swing. Yeah, get Averill in here, get Bennett in here, squeeze as much salary as we can get in the books. Come on, let's do it. Let's stay aggressive.
Yeah, and just in general on the field, like he go for it on fourth down. Field Goals did a study a while ago, like before the first few years of Carroll, we went for it on fourth down plenty, more than the average team. And then over the last several years, we went, I think, the least compared to what we should have been doing in terms of analytics. So something changed.
We used to call him Big Balls Pete, folks. We used to call him Big Balls Pete. Ian ML, thank you, Ian, as a Jets fan there for the $5 donation. We're getting a lot of love, by the way, Brandon. I don't know, hopefully you're getting in the channel as well. I've been very impressed by other teams' fans coming in and providing condolences, not coming in with any sort of troll nature, but just coming in and being really nice and kind, as they know what we're going through a little bit. Like we got to give you guys, you all right? Are you all right? No, you okay? It's okay. They're playing a little bit of the Robin Williams to our Will Hunting. You know what I mean? He says, Jets fans here, get Minshew cheaper, played at Washington State. If he's not draft quarterback next year and can be somewhat competitive rather than Drew Lock. What are your thoughts on that one, Brendan?
I would take a shot at Minshew if he's available. I mean, the Eagles just traded for him, and I don't think they're sold on Jalen Hurts right now, so they might want to keep him. But I like Minshew more than Locke. I'm not saying I like him, but it's more fun.
I agree with everything Brendan just said. I think Minshew's better player than Locke. He's a gamer. Obviously, he's got the local connections here, but I think what Brendan said, the key, what he just said, was the cost. Supposedly last year, Gardner Minshew was not available on a trade, but a team came calling the Eagles for a trade, and I believe the cost, I don't remember what it was at the time, but I was like, no one's paying that. Not for Gardner. No, nobody's paying that. And that's, I don't think they're fully sold on Jalen Hurts. They don't have another solid backup to bring in there that's going to be better than what they got in Minshew. He's not costing them a lot of money at this point in time. I think they just continue to ride from that standpoint. And if Hurts goes in the tank, they've got Minshew and backup, and they're a competitive team right now around their quarterback. They're not driven by their quarterback, is what I guess I'm trying to say on that.
Yeah, there was a game last year that Minshew started for the Eagles, and he won. And the story from the organization was that Hurts is injured. But a lot of people didn't buy it. They actually thought they wanted to see what Minshew could do. They don't believe in Hurts enough. They wanted to see if maybe Minshew can carry us for a little bit here.
We know now in retrospect, I knew it on draft night and looking at the guy in scouting. Hurts is not a bad player, but his arm is limited. And always, Brendan, I go back to with a quarterback, it's not the only thing. You need other attributes. But if you are limited in arm strength in the modern NFL, that's going to limit you as a quarterback, even if you have mobility, plus mobility. And that is the case with Jalen Hurts, is he is limited as a thrower, limited going back to college. This is how Tua Tagovailoa beat him out at Alabama, and he had to transfer to Oklahoma. It's no new thing under the sun. And the Eagles are definitely well aware of that aspect of it. So it's, to me, them looking at maybe another quarterback who might be able to throw, let's say, with a little bit more anticipation, like is in Minshew's bag, because he doesn't have that prerequisite arm strength, let's say. So I like the idea if you can bring him in cheap, but I'm not paying a second round pick, Brendan. We're not going second rounder for Minshew. I'm not going third rounder for Minshew. I'll go a fourth round pick for Minshew, but that's only if I'm riding with him and Locke going forward. But I can't go over that.
Yeah.
A couple more here on this one. Jonathan Salazar with the $2 donation. At least 2 bad seasons coming. Do you guys agree?
It depends on what happens next week with the Watson situation. If you don't get Watson, then I think you're looking at 1 bad season and 1 let's try to get our feet underneath us season, which could go either way. Like I'm kind of thinking about that 2012 season, right?
Right.
That was a season that it ended up working out really well for us, but it could have gone either way. There was a point in that season where I think we were 5-5. We had just lost to the Dolphins. It looked bad. And then we won that miracle game in Chicago. And then we got hot and managed to make the playoffs. But that season could have easily gone the other way. So easy for it to just tumble the other way. And we go 7-9 again. So to me, that's what you're looking at.
Yep. It all rides on the Watson aspect of this, Jonathan, to answer just like what Brendan said again. I agree with Brendan. Next year, this next year, if you got Watson, you're competitive. If you don't have Watson, yeah, next year's bad. But year two, especially if they do a lot of moves this year to set the page right and they're smart decisions and they get their drafting right, we don't have Carroll running the draft boards 24/7 anymore. If that's the case, then you can get this back to, like Brendan said, a 2012, and if not a 2012, at least let's say a 2011 season where you were starting to see the signs of life there, and then you have your quarterback going into year two and starting to be really ready, the guy you would get in 2023 draft. So I like it. Versace Gold brings up something that's an interesting part that's turned here today. Brendan with the $2 donation says Russ hates Donald. Now he has to deal with Bosa and Mac. Interesting news today on that, huh?
Yeah, the Bears GM is terrible. What was that? They're eating $24 million debt and they got nothing back for him, basically. Terrible trade.
And what is it? Is it a new general manager there, or is it still Pace?
I think they cleaned house.
So they brought in a new guy, and this is like one of his first moves. Idiot. Like,
yeah. Let me look this up here real quick. It's now a guy named Ryan Poles, former football player. Wow, he's 4 years older than me. Wow, we have NFL GMs that are basically my age now. That's terrifying.
I'll tell you, he's gonna be on a pole if he keeps making decisions like that.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
He had worked with the Chiefs for a long time with Andy Reid, so that's where he made his bones. Okay. If the thing is, in the Bears office, if the name placard on the door said Ryan P for Ryan Pace, they didn't have to change it because it's just Ryan Poles.
That's right. I remember that. I think they even hired two guys that look similar to the last two guys. It's kind of weird. But now the thing this does help us with, at least the nice part of Chicago's continuing saga of ineptitude, is at the very least now we see Mr. Mack heading on over to the AFC West, because at this point we're trying to ride right now with that Denver Bronco team losing next year. I wish Russell the best in 2024, but he's gonna. I'm sorry, you're gonna. I wish nothing but the worst for him next year, because nothing would be more beautiful and magnificent, Brendan, than we're able to get a top 5 first round pick and the top 5 second round pick in next year's draft on top of our own selection, wherever that may be.
Well, I'll say this: Nathaniel Hackett, completely unproven, and I'm not that impressed with his resume. Sounds to me like a clipboard holder. So if it happens, it'll happen more because of that than anything else. Or maybe a bunch of flukes happen. But the Chargers are looking across the street at the other LA team, and they're like, oh, we gotta do some stuff if we want to get noticed, because the other LA team is taking all the spotlight. And I admire it. I kind of wish we could have done that with Wilson, but we decided to go the alternative path. At least we took a path. But that Chargers team is not going to be messing around this offseason. You can see. No,
and it's good. We want an arms race out of that AFC West. We want it to be as hard as it absolutely possibly can be. And I did some studying on this a little bit, Brendan, for my show yesterday, where you looked at the Broncos last year, because everybody's telling us right now they're a juggernaut. Oh, they're ready to go be a Super Bowl contender right now with Russell. Right now. Not another move needs to be. And I go, I looked at things and I went, I don't know. I looked at their signature wins last year, and they were against the likes of your Jaguars and Jets. Nothing good there. Within their division, they were 1-5 in their own division. I understand that they had bad quarterback play, but you're telling me this is a team that's in the same position that Tampa Bay was essentially when Tom Brady came there. And I don't see as good a filled out roster as what Tampa Bay had walking in the door. Say nothing of the fact that they've got a tough schedule going into next year, Brendan, and they also are going to have to learn Russell Wilson. There's a learning process with Russell. You don't just bring him in and say, okay, Russ, here's the playbook, run it. You've got to learn, you like to step back and shotgun an extra 1.5 yards versus what other quarterbacks like to be sitting in. Okay, we'll accommodate that, but then we got to adjust our protections for that then, because then the edge rushers are going to come out a little bit wider then. So now that's going to and Russell goes, yeah, but that's how I've always done it. And so there's going to be a little bit of that as he's trying to operate within a West Coast offense, a little bit of that learning process, I think, within that. Would you agree?
There has to be. I think that would be the case with almost any quarterback you get. When Brady went to Tampa Bay, it wasn't great at first. It took a while. They were 7-5 at one point, and on the outside looking in, and then they got on a roll against bad teams, made the playoffs as a wild card, by the way, and rode to the Super Bowl. But it took time. Yeah. And I was somebody who actually thought it wasn't going to work at all with Bruce Arians and his no risk it, no biscuit, and Brady and his ultra conservative never turned the ball over game, but it worked. It just took time. So I'm sure it's going to take time for Wilson. And I think that it probably will work eventually, but yeah, there will be a transition period.
And and they have the toughest division in football right now, probably, which hopefully helps our fade out on this. Charles Riley, $5 donation says, for the record, I'd take Captain Kirk Cousins over Matty Ryan any day of the week. Not that Ryan is an option, but I bet Falcons fans want him to be. Actually, I would be in the same boat with you on that, Charles, but that's also because I think Matt Ryan's is a dome quarterback. He's like Drew Brees. It's like a quarterback that can be good, but you better keep him indoors and in hot weather 80% of the time to get the most out of him.
Now, I would say that Matt Ryan is so old, you wouldn't have to give him a monster contract. So I would kind of rather bring him in just because you could be done with it quickly. On the field, yeah, sure. I think Kirk Cousins is probably a little better than Ryan now, but I'm also thinking about it in terms of how long am I going to be stuck with this?
That's actually that's an underrated point there, Brendan. You're right, because that you would get him on that 1 year of $45 million. That's your deal, though, Brendan. You get the choice of a 1 year Matt Ryan coming in for let's say it costs us a second round pick, or you get a first round pick for Kirk Cousins, but you got to put him to a contract extension. I'm with you. You ride Ryan.
Yeah, like my best friend is a Bears fan, and I was talking with him last year, and I said I would trade Carroll for Matt Nagy, and he said, "No, you wouldn't, dude. Matt Nagy is terrible." And I said, "I know he's terrible, so we could get him and then fire him at the end of the year because he's terrible. We can't fire Carroll because of what he did 8 billion years ago, but Matt Nagy, we could get out of here." So to me, that's a bigger consideration than who's a little bit better than the other guy.
Yeah, good point. That's a great point on that. I'd lean the other way too. I'm sorry. I'm riding with Matt Ryan there, Charles, but thank you for the donation. I do appreciate it. And we're almost caught up here on the donos. Just want to catch Ethan Tech World. Baseball is back. Woo! Let's go Mariners.
All right. Yeah, this is now I'm going to convert my channel to a Mariners Brendon Nelson now.
Are you going
that way? That's actually I think that's actually going to get more views now because half my fan base says that if Wilson's not here, I'm not going to be a Seahawks fan anymore. So I guess that's where the money is now. But no, I'm actually really excited about baseball. That's going to be fun. I'm glad we're only missing 6 games. So happy that worked out in the long run.
Yeah, thank God. As we're finally good to be good for the first time in 20 years, we get a chance to enjoy it and not have some shortened season or whatever. And these guys need to get in there and play some ball and keep developing. So the young guys need to mature. I'm still deciding if I'm going to run on my channel, Brendan, or if I'm just going to do a Mariners channel. And because you get those also fans that are football fans that just don't want to hear anything with baseball. So it's like you don't want to piss off the sub count on one side of it, but then you're like, well, I don't know. I'm trying to decide on that as well because I would like to stream some games. There's nothing funner in baseball than watching a young team go.
Yeah. Apparently free agency opens the moment they signed that agreement. So we got to get on it because Chris Bryant is still out there and we got to make that happen because I don't think we're ready yet. Not with this roster.
No, they need to spend some more money. They need to be aggressive where they can, especially when it just comes down to giving up money and not having to give up any of those young prospects, which you'd have to do if you get to the trade deadline. And I really want that to be avoided here with this team as much as they can. You eventually are going to do it. You're eventually going to make a trade with one of these young guys because you have the farm system that's so deep and you want to, you're going to want to go for it, but hold off as long as you can. Braveheart that one as long as you possibly can. But thank you to Ethan. And yeah, we're stoked. Me and Brendan both can't wait for baseball. I know. Charles says, by the way, I have no doubt Watson got a shandy. When that many cases arise, quote unquote, he had to do something to mix it up. Can we get Watson cheaper if we can prove he got a shandy? It hurt Eddie Murphy's career. Did it hurt Eddie Murphy's? He kept rolling after his little thing.
Wasn't that after all of his good movies though? That was after Trading Places and Coming to America, Beverly Hills Cop, 48 Hours.
That's true.
So all of his good movies were before that, I think. All his best comedy specials were before that. So it did. As for that part of it, I mean, his value's already been hurt. This is a guy that the Texans turned down an offer of 3 first-rounders and 3 third-rounders on. Now we're talking about getting him for 2 firsts and 2 seconds, maybe. Yeah. So the damage is already pretty substantial.
And it doesn't go up a year after him not playing. You can talk all you want about him being in his prime, but his value is not. It's only gone down in that time period. To Brendan's point, and nobody was willing to pay the price back then. So that is how that works. Is it doesn't increase with time.
Yeah, and can we confirm that he hasn't been eating like KFC and McDonald's every day
I
while
know,
he's
it's
not been
seriously.
playing?
Can you
Like, I
imagine?
really would like proof of that. I mean, I think that's what Andrew Bynum did every time he got hurt. He would just call up Pizza Hut and be like, "Hey, can I set up like a recurring pizza delivery every night at 6?" So I don't know. I'd like some proof of life. I want a picture of Deshaun Watson holding up today's newspaper or something.
He comes in like Ben Roethlisberger, just big gut, big old beard coming out just onto the field like, oh no. Oh no. No. Jonathan Salazar with a $5 donation says, but is it really fair to compare to the 2012 season? In 2012 and 2011, we had the defense that had Thomas, Sherman, and Chancellor, and our defense was fierce. I don't think that's what you were meaning by that comparison. What you were meaning by the comparison of more in the like wins and losses, I think, and in the general, like you're in a state to compete, not in that you had a legendary team that you were feeling is going to be built, right?
Yeah, and you got to remember, I'm also assuming that we get good young talent this offseason and next offseason.
Yeah.
We're not gonna have Earl Thomas, we're not gonna have Richard Sherman, we're not gonna have Cam Chancellor, we're not gonna have that D line, but we're going to have other players that, if we play our cards right, are going to be able to add similar value.
Right. And that's where I stand on this too, Jonathan. It's about we're anticipating they use the 50 some odd, 60 some odd million, whatever amount of money they end up being able to spend this offseason. They use some of it appropriately. They draft the right guys with these picks that they have to spend, that they position themselves correctly to get a quarterback that's truly talented and upper level next year in the draft with the assets they have going forward. So we are anticipating things being done right. And I know with this front office, that's always a little bit of a shaky thing, but the 2012 aspect from our standpoint is just about competition level. That 2012 team ended up becoming legendary into 13 and 14, kind of becoming really special. But it was more about they weren't in 2012. It was a really good team, a team on the rise, a team you're going to have to worry about going into the future. And that's the type of team we're talking about building. Would you say, is that accurate there, Brendon?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And you need to do the work. You need to get the right players in here. But a lot of people seem to think, and I always try to push back against this, that rebuilding takes like 6 years in the NFL. It doesn't. You can turn things around very quickly. All these people are like, we're not going to be good for 8 years if we get rid of Russell Wilson. It doesn't have to be that way. Now, I'm inclined to suspect that a guy like Pete Carroll is going to struggle to make the right decisions because the decision making has not been great recently, but we see teams turn it around in a year or 2 years all the time. All the time.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not right. It's like I've been trying to tell people, it's not baseball, it's not basketball. You're not in this sport put in some dungeon for 5-10 years when you lose a great quarterback or a great player or a great collection of players. We lost a whole legion of boom, still remained competitive. Granted, it was with Russell Wilson going into his prime, but football is just a weird sport. It's a beautiful, it's a great thing for that in that respect. You can come back out of the ashes so much more quicker. You're not just stuck in purgatory, and that to me will always give me confidence that you can turn it around. It's just built on not making dumb decisions.
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. We got caught up there, Brendan. Thank you for well, wait, where Charles is knocking us for the Matt Ryan stuff. He says, riding with Matt Ryan is the most pathetic thing I've ever heard spoken.
I'm not riding with him.
Yeah, we're
I'm
not
just
riding.
I'm just
Give it
letting
to
him
him.
sit on the corner of the wagon and then I'm pushing him off after a year. I
That's
think
all
that's a
we're
little
doing.
different.
He's
Yeah.
holding down the wagon to get us through the snow, and then once we get through the snows and we're on the highlands, he's off the cliff. It's more me and Brendan's worry of giving Cousins that contract and being married to him. And I think that's more of where we look at that, in that decision, than anything else about looking and liking Ryan. I mean, I don't like Ryan. I don't think he'd work out in the outdoor stadium. It'd be horrific. But guess what? We get a high first round pick because we wouldn't be as good as people think we would with Matt Ryan at that point. And then he'd be gone in a year and his money's off the books completely. As opposed to Cousins, where you sign Cousins in, what is it going to cost, Brendan? You bring Cousins in, you sign him to a 4-year deal is that $200 million clean? Is that $200 clean at that point?
Oh God, that's disgusting. That is disgusting.
I mean, if paying Kirk Cousins $200 million doesn't give you some pause or stop your heart for a beat, I don't know what will, man.
I mean, if Rodgers got paid that, can't you point to that and be like, you are not Aaron Rodgers. You are not getting the Aaron Rodgers deal. Like, does he really think he's an Aaron Rodgers type of quarterback? You got to
So
be.
that's why I was telling, it's like there should be more of a mid-tier system with the quarterbacks in the NFL who understand, okay, look, I'm not the hotness. I'm not the guy that's driving the needle in this sport. I'm really good though. I'm also really good. I'm a Derek Carr. I'm a Kirk Cousins. So where is the mid-tier grade? But you watch these guys whenever they're up, Brendan, it's like clockwork, man. Whoever the next guy up, it's like, oh, well, I'm pushing what the last guy made at the highest mark up by another 5%. And there is no middle tier when it comes to QBs in this respect. And so there is no getting him on a discount. You're paying full Cousins price. Every last dollar bill of that one you're having to roll with.
Yeah. We're all hoping that teams like the Baltimore Ravens and San Francisco 49ers burst this QB bubble, because both those teams, to me, really could be the teams that go, you know what, we're not playing your game anymore. And maybe once they do it, other teams will follow, and this whole thing will be over.
Brendan, you bring up a great point there, because I think you and I both stand on the same point. I don't think it's good for the overall football sport having a player taking up this amount of the cap space, be it the quarterback position, and that if you had more of the mid-tier system, it would open the door up to more of a difference in the way you could build football teams to be great. And the teams, rather than leaning to a player, to the teams. And I agree with you. I hope that they're starting to learn. There's some signs with this, Brendan. Lamar Jackson can't get paid. Mayfield's not getting paid yet. Kyler Murray's having to put freaking Post-it notes to everybody to tell him that how valuable he is and how much he should have earned a deal. But it does look like maybe teams are starting to learn this lesson, if even just a tiny bit. And that is going to be a welcome thing from my standpoint of things. All right, let's push this through to last kind of questions I want to ask you, because we're about under a week away now from free agency beginning, and you and I had done so much talking about where we thought free agency was going to go, about what players we would be selecting, and man, we have to break the model completely apart. Our whole plan, our whole projection, in a lot of respects, is going out the door. So there's two main places that I stand with this questioning. You just did a video this morning, I believe, on the 3-4, where we're at with needs on 3-4 personnel. Where do you see? You don't know for sure, man. I'm not holding you to this answer, and nobody should. Just, we're making educated guesses here. Where do you see this team going in the direction of free agency?
Well, I think just talking about retaining guys, I do think we're going to really try a little harder to bring back Penny, because what we're going to be trying to do going forward without Wilson is building a super strong rushing attack, and I feel like Penny's a big part of that with the way he played at the end of the season. So I will say that I think keeping Penny is now a little more imperative than it was before. But in terms of what you're going to do in terms of going and getting other teams' players, I don't know. If you don't get Watson, then I'm not seeing a whole heck of a lot of point in going out and getting anything big anymore. We kind of talked about this a couple days ago, but are you really going to go get Clowney now when Clowney might have his contract up before you get the next quarterback? Maybe not. So
what if you wanted to do this thing though, where they're trying to do this, we're going to zig in when everyone's zagging. So the old NFL teams right now, everyone's like, I'm going to hire an offensive minded coach. I'm going to build to the offensive side of the ball. And Carroll's like, the hell with that. I'm seeing everybody drive this way, this hard, in this direction. We're going to be the one team that goes this way. We're going to go this way hard. And he just starts 9th pick, defensive side of the ball. Clowney, get me Gilmore. I just starts going just nutball city in his approach as far as what he looks at with it, and starts saying this, we're going to build a ferocious defense first and foremost, and then we'll figure out the offensive side of the ball.
Well, if recent history has taught us anything, whenever Pete Carroll thinks something and everyone else in the world thinks the other thing, we know that Pete Carroll's on the right side of history, right?
Yeah, that is true. He's hitting 100. He's hitting 1,000% on that.
That being said, are you really going to go like that in a year when you've got 30 million dead? Like that, even if you wanted to go that way, that's hamstrings you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I definitely see us signing some guys. Like we probably need a left tackle, and I don't think Dwayne Brown's going to want to really come back now anyway. Like what's the point? We're probably going to find some guy I've never heard of before to just hold down the fort and give some competition to Forsythe. We're probably going to bring in a center who's a little better than Kyle Fuller to compete with Posick, but it's not going to be any of the big guys. And defensively, I feel like we're going to attack the defense through the draft. I feel like you're going to be looking at getting, like apparently Seattle really likes Travis Jones. They haven't made that a secret, and I like him too. I think that's how you deal with nose tackle. Logan Hall as a defensive end, and then you've got the outside linebackers we've been talking about. I feel like we're going to attack defense more in the draft. Maybe we still add a guy like a Clowney, but Gilmore, I don't see it. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. JC Jackson, no, I don't think we're going to go that far with it.
Yeah, I don't see J.C. Jackson either, and I don't think they will as well. I think the amount of dead money they're eating, and especially if they happen to move Lockett, which by the way, Brendan, it should. If they do intend to move Lockett, you would expect it to happen before the start of free agency, and if not, probably indicative that maybe the draft you could move him still too between. But so I understand that roster bonus clicking in for that $13 million cap hit is the precursor here to cause this.
Yeah. Basically, here's how I feel. Before free agency starts, you should have either traded for Watson or traded Lockett.
Right.
Don't do both. Don't do neither. Do one of them. Whichever one's fine. I can live with either, but do one of them.
Yes.
Period.
Yes. Because let's not forget, Lockett is not a fit for this scheme. He's not the receiver fit for what Waldron wants here. And this has got to be a bit more about this offseason and our approach for long-term, not for a quick fix, but for long-term to start to build your offense, not only on the offensive line with the guys that you need to make it work right, but also the skill position players that are very specific in this type of scheme we're running right now. Couple quick other donations here. Chase Stern with a $5 donation says, I would rather run Jermaine Ifedi at quarterback than Cousins. God, I hate Kirk. I'm with you, Chase. I'm with you on that one, man. I hate the thought of it. Drives me crazy. Byron D with a $2 donation says, what about Jordan Love? Ooh, learning from Rodgers?
I'll give up a bag of chips for him, but I don't like him. I'm not into it.
What's a bag of chips?
The rights to Marshawn Lynch's contract. I don't know. I don't like Jordan Love. I don't see it. I'm not seeing it.
No, he got to sit for a year and a half, played Kansas City Chiefs' defense last year, which was not a juggernaut defense, at home in Lambeau. And he looked like a deer in the headlights for the whole totality of the game. That to me is, I didn't like him coming out a lot necessarily myself. I thought a lot of people, another one of those quarterbacks, Brendan, it's going to happen in this year. We're going to see a couple of quarterbacks get talked into the first round. Teams talk themselves into this guy being, and he's not that value. Second, third round, that's the value, but teams the need drives them. And that was one where that made that move by the Packers a lot much more stupid, of course, because they didn't have the needed quarterback, yet they're making this move like Rodgers had retired the previous day or something. But what has Jordan shown you in any of his I think had some preseason snaps this year or in the regular season he played that would gravitate you towards him outside of his draft pedigree? Which to me, there's just, as Brendan said, bag of chips. Maybe a fifth. That's about as high as I'm legitimately going to go to. And even that, I don't even know if I'm not a big Jordan guy, man. He doesn't do a lot for me. Charles Riley, the $10 donation says, we won't know who Russ is till he's in Denver. I have to say the fragrance he and Sierra LaSalle looks wonderful, but I hope it doesn't smell like Pete Carroll naked in the mirror applying Old Spice. We'll learn years later, Charles, that was the secret ingredient. Thank you for all your donations, though, Charles, very much.
Yeah.
And we'll learn a lot about it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I assume Denver's going to build around him in a way that we weren't quite willing to do. So the excuses are going to start to go out the window, and we're going to see what he is. And I'm interested. I'm interested to see where this goes. Yeah. Because he's got great receivers already, Judy, Sutton, and Patrick. I don't know who his tight end is now, but the offensive line's good. I see some people saying the Denver offensive line is great. I don't really see that. I think they're still starting Garrett Bowles, which that guy in the old NFL communities I was in, that guy was a meme. Yeah. That guy was a huge meme. One of the guys who led the league in holding every year. So I don't know if it's great, but it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, he had, I think, horrible start to 3 years, and then like the year 4, of course, right before contract time, suddenly just turned everything around, and he had this like outstanding year for them, and it like put them in the barrel where they decided to give him a contract extension. And then remember they had that whole situation last year, I think, with the guy, remember the guard who had the offseason injury, and then they cut him, and it was a free agent signing of theirs, and they cut him, and he was there to be helping out their offensive line. I forget his name, Juwan James. Remember?
Yeah, there we go, Juwan James.
Right. They had that whole situation, which so their line isn't as good. I agree with though Charles on this one, and that we're going to learn part of why Brendan and I were advocates for going for Team Russ over Team Carroll at the start of this offseason was because of the question mark. We don't know for sure that if you build an offensive line around Russell, if he could not maybe flourish behind it, if he could not maybe become an MVP type player around it, because for 10 years, he's had a run block first offensive line. And now, to Brendan's point, Denver's going to build around them. I will say this, Brendan. Denver better be smart in this approach. And going forward this year, they have $26 million of cap space. And now is going to be the time to strike because he's going to want that contract extension after this year. So if I'm them, I'm going wildly into this free agency period. But build that offensive line up around him, Brendan, if I'm them. That's what I would put at the forefront of my decision making, because that's the thing you've not seen with Russell. Is that an accurate way to put your stance on it?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And the AFC West, like we've said many times, is not going to make it easier. It's like, you remember the old Bugs Bunny, Yosemite Sam cartoon where they keep pulling out bigger guns to point at each other? Like they pull out the shooter and then they pull out the big gun and then the bazooka. And it's like that in that division. So the Chargers have a ton of cap space too, by the way. They have more. Mm-hmm. They actually have more spending power. The Chiefs, they're not in great shape. They're probably going to let Frank Clark go. But that division, it's an arms race. Absolutely.
If you got Mahomes, Kelsey, Tyreek, what they've got, the offensive line, which will get better in year 2 that they rebuilt this year, that will have more continuity next season. They're going nowhere. And Oakland is just cagey enough to try to take a big swing at this point and try some other things on their end to round things off. So I agree. I think they've now become the toughest division of football, with us sliding back just maybe a little bit and some of the question marks with the Cardinals that are there. They really go to the forefront of this as being that division now, which again helps our chances out.
Well, they're saying they might trade Carr, and if they trade Carr, I don't know what they do to get good this year. Like, I know Carr isn't the greatest, but if you're actually going to move him, who are you getting to replace him?
Well, and let's face it, McDaniels can come in there and say, you allowed John Gruden to come in here and do A, B, C, D, and now I'm not going to fix all that in 1 year. And whether that's valid or not, it's an excuse that will stick with ownership and they'll buy, which would lead you to trade a guy like Carr to clear out cap space and get things going and get value for it. I mean, what you're going to get for Carr? I mean, you could get maybe a first round pick from him. Would not the Colts give you a first round pick for Derek Carr right now?
You're probably right.
Yeah. So it makes sense for me, especially like you said, there's a part of this with our decision making on this. This is a part that references us, Brendan, and I know I'm keeping you for a bit here, so we'll wrap this up here in a sec. But there's a part that relates to us on this of when is the time to go for it, when is not the time to go for it. And I'm not speaking about just the talent on your football team. I'm speaking about also of looking around at the division around you. You know, I've talked to you about my feast factor theory, which is that usually the Super Bowl teams that go and win it have to have a little bit of a feast factor involved. Of course, this was proven wrong this year with the Rams going and winning it. But in recent years, when you look at the Super Bowl winners, they tend to be able to beat up on the weak Nellies of their division a little bit. And you can make the argument with us in choosing to be rebuild now. Niners ready to go. Rams ready to go. Cardinals still, whether or not they'll have Kyler on a rookie quarterback going forward, we don't know, but they're still in a position to be really tough. Maybe it's a little easier road 2 years down the line.
It almost certainly will be. And one thing with the Rams winning the Super Bowl this year, I mean, I think they caught a big break when Green Bay blew that 49ers game. I really think it was Green Bay's Super Bowl to lose, and Rodgers decided that he'd rather have 0 turnovers in a playoff game than actually win that playoff game or something. I don't know.
It was weird, wasn't it?
I don't know how Aaron Rodgers can ask for $200 million after playing a game like that. But
wasn't there a weird energy from him though? That you agree? You're on. I think it was something was, but like off energy, not like I'm injured or something, but like you're saying, almost playing. I don't know.
He just kind of sat there and let it happen. It felt like he was just like, I don't care if we lose this game. All I care about is protecting my stats so I don't have a turnover. That way they can't blame me, right? Well,
right.
No, that's not true. Field Goals had an article last week. The only thing worse than turnovers is being so scared of turning the ball over that you never take any risks.
Right.
They actually said, take it, it's worse to never turn the ball over than to sometimes turn the ball over if that's just going to make you play terrified all the time.
Right. Which is apropos to us, isn't it, Brendan? Because we know that there's an element that within that in Carroll and his philosophy, which is it's all about the ball. It's all about protection, never have a turnover. And people harped on Wilson rightly for holding onto the ball and not having enough ability to sometimes throw with anticipation. Don't wait for the guy to absolutely break free, anticipate him breaking open. But some of that was probably built on the back of Carroll just for 10 years in his ear saying, you make sure you're there, make sure it's there, make sure when you throw it, it's going to be open. Make sure you don't throw it to the defender. That kills us. mean, that's what
Yeah.
killed the let Russ cook movement, wasn't it? Was just simply he threw a couple extra interceptions and Carroll lost his mind over it.
Yeah, yeah. I remember Russell's rookie year working at AT&T, sitting in my cubicle, and the guys right next to me in the other cubicle were talking about Wilson. This was like 4 games into his career, and they're saying, "What do you think about this Wilson guy?" And the other guy goes, Carroll, he doesn't let his quarterbacks ever throw over the middle because he's afraid of turnovers." And it took a long time for that to change.
Well, and it's just he had that thing he built. I've talked with you about it before, where he built that philosophy from when he got fired in the NFL, when he was going back to college and trying to determine on what it is that wins football games, and it was turnovers and big plays. And he said, "I'm going to make these two things the things I become obsessed with, and that's going to drive my philosophy." But there is the downside, to that. There is, kind of the downside to that as well on that. It's not all
Mhm.
said. To your point, it's just as bad as having a lot of turnovers, is getting so safe in that, then you're just unwilling to take any chances. And in this NFL, it's not just good enough to have a great defense. You have to have an offense that can do something. It can't just be, it's going to just, all they got to do is not make mistakes. That's not going to lead to an elite team in this modern NFL. Would you agree?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, totally. Absolutely.
All right, well, let's finish it up with this last donation here in the chat. And man, we had a great turnout today, Brendan. Well over at one point, I think 350 in here. So awesome turnout, guys. Thank you for that. Big Wave Dave with a $5 donation. Thank you, Big Wave Dave, and to all of you who've donated the channel today. Says, don't you guys feel we're not going to get a high first rounder from Denver? If so, how likely are we going to get a quarterback next year? And let's operate,
Um,
Brendan. This is a question without the operating that Deshaun Watson's here.
Well, I don't think it's likely the first rounder from Denver is high. It might be in the middle, it might be low. Unlikely it's high unless Nathaniel Hackett is awful, which possible. He's completely unproven in my eyes. Or a bunch of injuries happen. So always possible. But even if it's not a high first rounder, then you're going into next year with 2 first rounders. If there's a guy you like, trade up. Use your 2 first round picks to trade up to get the quarterback if you have a guy that you really believe in. Who are the top guys in the draft next year? It's going to be Bryce Young and the Ohio State guy, Stroud.
And you got 2 other guys. There's Williams, who's going to be at USC this year. He'll be an interesting guy to look at. And then the guy getting a lot of love right now is, I think, Levis. He is the dark horse that's now starting to come up on a lot of people's board. The more of a, not big school guys like some of the other guys, but he's really, a lot of people are putting a lot of heat behind Levis right now. So we could even have even more coming into the foray on that as well. The stuff does tend to change over the period of time, even from now.
Yeah. I'll say this, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, not crazy about either of those guys right now, but there's plenty of time for me to change my mind.
I'm in the same place. I'm still needing a little more. They're not completely convincing me yet, but then I think there's going to be, whether it's them or somebody else, I think it's going to be better than this class, because historically there always usually is at least 2 or 3 guys. It doesn't tend to be like this year, Brendan, where top 5 guys in last year's draft of quarterbacks all would have been higher than any of the quarterbacks in this draft. And I think any of the quarterbacks coming out in next year's draft, even if we're just talking about Stroud, the kid I talked about, Williamson at USC, or Bryce Young, I think all 3 of them would go higher than the guys in this draft. I think Drew Lock was in this draft. He'd be your 3rd quarterback off the board.
Yeah. Let's just go Philadelphia 76er trust the process until Archie Manning comes out.
Hey, I'm with it. It only takes a couple years of sucking to make that happen. And what a team we'd have built up around him, Brendan, by the time you're hitting that ground running. And my last quick point, I'm going to go a little bit too far into this, Brendan, but let's just look really quickly. Next year, Denver going to be good. Denver's going to be good. The only way Denver's going to be good for sure, if we're going to say, oh, they're definitely a Super Bowl contender, is if they use up that $26 million brilliantly, because they don't have the draft assets now going into this draft to really get the kind of impact players that are going to help them right out the gate next year. And we're just talking about next year here, Brendan. We spoke about this top of the show. 1-5 in their division last year, a division which is not getting any easier next year. It's not getting any easier. Their out of division schedule is the AFC North and the NFC West. So they play in the toughest division in football, Brendan, for 6 games, and then they have an additional 4 games in the second toughest division in football. Are we sure? There's not some potential here of a high pick next year's draft, that there isn't some potentiality here of a top 10 pick? I mean, are we absolutely positive it's just because Russell arrives there, the team that was in last place this year in their division is gonna swing things that considerably? It may be. But are you as convinced, Brendan, on that?
I mean, nothing's guaranteed in this league. We've
Yeah.
seen crazier things happen before.
Yeah.
The Bengals were in the Super Bowl just now. Like crazy things happen. So I cannot. I can't rule it out. I don't think it's likely at this moment. I think they're good enough to win at least 10 games. And they're potentially good enough to do better than that. But to me, Kansas City is still the team to beat in that division. Don't know why people seem to be forgetting about them. They had an offensive line that came out of the gates very slow last year, and they still won that division. So,
and an offensive line that they are building correctly. They built appropriate last offseason. It was understandable why it was like a first-year offensive coordinator. It's understandable why an offensive line put wholly together from start to front, all 5 guys knew it's going to take a year for it to kind of set fully at its best. But they will be at their best next year, and it's going to help them continue to be. Their defense might suck. They'll lose Honey Badger. They'll lose Clark, but their offense will still be
their defense
tough.
always sucks. Their defense always sucks.
Oh,
Let's be real.
Does. No, and it does. It does. And going back to that Frank Clark trade, that's a great trade in retrospect on our part. There's still some people that get that one twisted. I don't understand why. We made the right decision on that one.
Yeah, I think it's because Frank Clark had that one really good playoff run when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, but his sack numbers and pressure numbers since he left Seattle went way down, which shocked me. I was actually looking at it. He got like 50 pressures his last year in Seattle, and then he's gotten like 30, 25. Yeah, it's not the same player.
That's what I've been trying to harp on, that Pro Football Focus had him rated like 83 out of 90 defensive ends over the last 2 years. He turned it on in the playoffs, and don't forget as well, Brendon, he doesn't play the run. Frank Clark doesn't. He is not interested in playing the run anymore. Hasn't for a very long period of time, which that was a strength for him coming out in college. But the second he dropped to 259, he said no more playing the run. All right, I've kept it to way too long here, but one last dono to finish this up. Hootie Jew with a $10 donation. Man, Hootie, you're being so kind lately with all the donos. The channel says, "What's up, Brandon? And what's up, Brendan? And what's up, Hawks Nest? Hawks Nest Nation just joined in. What I miss, Brandon? Also, y'all at number 3 now with the most money. Y'all can make a big splash this offseason, or y'all can't wait till 2023. I do feel like, Hootie, I've got to start reading out with a little more of a Cajun accent because I know you are a Saints fan with that. I got to work on my Cajun. I think when me and Brendan both sit on the line of we're happy we got this cap space, but we would rather not misspend it. I'm almost in the camp, Brendan, of if we're in rebuild, look to roll the money over next year, right?
Yeah, 100%. To me, the only big splash to make is Watson. If you don't do that, then don't be stupid here and build for a quarterback that you don't have.
Very, very well said. And you asked about what we've been leaning in. That's what this is right now where we stand. I think that sums this show up as much as the other items we talked about. Watson is the domino. If the Watson domino falls into the Seattle favor, you go one direction. If the domino falls in the other direction away from you and it's not a possibility, then you go fully into that other direction. To me, that is where the choice should be made from this organization as we look into this offseason. Is you're in the same place on that, Brendan?
Right. I don't see the point of getting rid of Wilson just to build another team that is just going to bob around in the middle again. And that's what you're doing if you decide to spend big this offseason around Drew Lock or Geno Smith or even Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, that's it. Just don't pick the middle ground. Don't try to, it's a fork in the road. Take one fork or the other. Take one ground or the other. There's not always 3 options. You can take the third option, but it's just not going to be as successful if you end up kind of trying to parse things through a little bit. Our Paul's got a $2 donation. He says, and thank you, Paul, and thank you, Hoobie. You're awesome. DJ Reed heading back to the 49ers. Do we have breaking news on this?
No, I just checked. I'm not seeing anything, but there's a lot of talk that it will happen. At this point, I'm kind of agnostic on DJ Reed.
Yeah.
I just jumped on Twitter, by the way. I actually looked when I saw that super chat. I don't see anything yet, but I'm kind of agnostic on DJ Reed. He is young enough to where you could say he'll be part of the next good Seahawks team if you're rebuilding, but he's also going to cost some money. So you could say, yeah, let's we can always find corners. We've always been able to find corners. Let's just not. So I'm agnostic on that.
I'm in the same place. If he goes back to the Niners at this point, fine. I'm okay with it. I'm completely all right with it. It's this is a different world now we're in than it was 5 days ago. And things are changing up. And I do think at the end of the day, the cost for him is going to end up being a lot more eye-popping. It's going to be one of those, you and I, Brendan, talked about 4 years, 24, and it's going to be like, oh, geez, he got a 4-year 34, he got significantly more than we were willing to probably put down on the guy. So we'll see where it goes with him, but I'm okay with letting him go on it. He's a good player, but as Brendan said, we've done really well I mean, we got Michael Jackson's kid was out there last year balling for us. And, I mean, if we can get Michael Jackson's kid out there, his illegitimate kid out there balling, then you can get just about damn near anybody.
It wasn't the one that he dangled off the balcony?
No, it was the other one. It was the love child from the late 70s. It was a Studio 86. Remember that Studio 86 in New York, and somebody talked him into it, just a weird thing. So I won't tell you who the mother is. I'll tell you who the mother is off mic, but he's a hell of a corner. Great slide step. Great slide step technique there on that Jackson.
Yeah. And he's got a futures contract, so he's not going anywhere.
That's right. And boy, highest rated defender in that final game for us. A little fun fact for you, Den, by Pro Football Focus. When we started. Yeah,
I defender, that.
Highest rated defender, just crazy. Well, Brendon, this has been awesome as always. Thank you for letting me keep you along on here. Look, folks, if you haven't already, get yourself on over there to Seahawks Brendon Nelson's channel. He does nearly daily content covering the Seahawks end to end as he does. Go over there and please do subscribe to his channel. I'm over there every other week on his channel on Thursday at 7:00 p.m. He's over here every other Thursday on here at 7 p.m. And as always, we're going to be doing these I get the next emergency stream, Brendon. So I'll be taking that next one off you when we got the Deshaun Watson news breaking. But we're going to be doing some emergency streams, some draft coverage, and maybe even I can talk Brendon doing a Mariner stream on my new channel when we get that rolling.
Yeah, we got to do something, man. I mean, the Mariners may be better than the Seahawks for at least a couple of years here. It's possible.
There may be a new king in town now. There's no doubt about that. And they are looking like they're ready to go. And that's a beautiful thing. So thank you very much. Charles Riley finishes off right with a $5 donation, says Killer Bees. That's right. BNB going strong. We love doing this. We're going to keep doing this. And folks, no Russell Wilson, no Bobby Wagner, but don't forget, we got to keep the spirit, keep the love, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.